to the seminar. We're very fortunate to have Ken Hemingway with us tonight, and we would be very interested in the feedback. We've done one of these once before. We hope that it's useful to you, so make sure that you give us feedback. And Suzanne, I'll turn it over to you to introduce Kent and get us started.
Thanks, everybody, for taking part in the webinar today. I just wanted to go over a few things as we go through this so you guys kind of understand how we're accepting questions, which we are. So everybody's going to be on mute during the webinar. We're going to welcome questions, so how questions will be accepted and answered are the following. During each section or topic that Kent is discussing, if you have a question, please raise your hand in the webinar, and at the end of the section, I'll be randomly and unmuting people to have Kent answer the question. During the Q&A, at the end of the session, we'll also be answering additional questions, so please type your question box, and we'll get as many as possible at the end of Kent's discussion. So we're going to try to accommodate as many questions as possible, so just kind of bear with us as we go through this. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over presentation to Kent Hemingway. He's been in the education field for over 35 years and is currently serving as the Superintendent of Schools for Guilford School District in New Hampshire. We're going to cover tonight actually, cover letter, applications, references, portfolio and supplemental materials, and interview process, and if time allows, making choices from multiple offers, and then we'll be doing, again, the Q&A at the very end. So thank you, everybody. Kent, I'm changing my presenter to you.
Great. Ready to go. And it looks like I am in. And Suzanne, are you able to tell me that I'm on?
Yeah, well, I don't see your we don't see your PowerPoint yet, so you just need to share your screen. Yep.
I'm up and on the screen. Have you got it now?
Yep.
Great. Okay, here we go. Well, welcome, everyone. From our attendee list, it looks like we're up to 114 participants right now, and I appreciate your interest in SchoolSpring and in preparing for a job in the education field. Before I start with all the nuts and bolts of this, I want to thank you for your interest in this field and in reflecting on 35 years in the business and 30 as an administrator, what a wonderful career it is, and how fortunate we are to have people of with such care and interest for the future of our children. But a little bit about how I got to get here and do this tonight. I have been in the administrative business as assistant principal, assistant superintendent for some 30 years now. And in reflecting on this, there were only 3 of the hires that I was involved with that ended up in a non-renewal or a dismissal. I have served in 7 successful positions as teacher, teaching principal, assistant principal, 2 principal positions, 6 years as assistant superintendent. I'm in my first year as superintendent of schools in Guilford, as Suzanne said earlier. And obviously there were successful interviews and search processes for me for those positions, but I didn't put down, it's at least in double figures, the number of interviews and rejections that I experienced for positions at every one of those levels. The good news in reflecting on it is it's not in triple digits, and I'm not going to give you the real number, but it is most certainly in double digits. Most recently, I have taught a seminar for student teachers at Plymouth State University in Plymouth, New Hampshire. I've been involved with student teaching supervision for many years, and each semester do a session for the student teachers there on reality, on what it takes to be successful in a job search and some of the characteristics that they should be very careful about as they prepare to enter the career. There are many resources available, and you're going to see quite a few of them here, and hopefully be able to just through your own searches find many, many online resources to help you prepare for your applications. But the best thing I'd have to say from all of this is peer review. I would strongly encourage you, whatever you have prepared, to have colleagues, administrators, supervisors review your information with you. and make sure it is reflective of your skills and your abilities. I've seen people who have kind of underplayed their successes in statements or beliefs of humility, and people who have overplayed their accomplishments in ways that really didn't pay off for them well when you get further into the interview process. So again, best is peer review and to have other folks looking at your materials as you move on. As you start, I'm sure many of you have been out on the web and looked at many areas and many sites that will give you samples. I was able to prepare for this and find a couple of these sites, and they're very simple websites that will give you many of these samples. Powerful, maybe, useful, certainly. Can get lost in the many options that are out there, most definitely. So I would encourage you to take and beat around a little bit out there, but don't take a formula. And the strong advice that I would have is not to take a formula. When I receive the formula application packages, that is usually pretty easy to detect. There's one or two templates from Microsoft Word that are the most commonly used, and I would have to say they're clean and they're simple and they work, but tell me pretty quickly that there wasn't much creativity or personalization that went into that package. The first part we want to talk about here, though, is the cover letter. And you see the sample I have up here came from one of these sites, and clean, simple, and to the point. I was supervising my current student teacher in a third grade class last week where she was teaching a lesson on writing a friendly letter. And the basic characteristics of date and heading and body and content and closing all apply and most certainly need to be part of your preparation in that cover letter. So much of what Suzanne and I had talked about in preparing for this webinar is really to emphasize the basics. Every piece of your work needs to be clean and appropriate. You can see from this sample that this cover letter is, how should you say, well structured, to the point, not too wordy, contains two major paragraphs, a closing and a couple of bullets. And again, you don't have to follow that exact structure, but it is, I think, a very good example of an effective cover letter. Cover letter should just be the cover. If you find you need more than a page for that, then you need to do some editing. It was definitely, the cover letter should be something to grab the attention of the reader, tell a little bit about your qualifications, and as this sample says, some strengths that you would bring. Applications are very simple, and the simple word to you is be complete. I had a search in my district just in the past couple of months, and we had a number of packages that came in, even though we had requested an application. The application didn't follow with the materials, and some candidates were rejected as a result of not having that information there. There were candidates who we felt really good about that we went back and asked for them to get that completed application to us. The good news about using SchoolSpring is that all of this service will be taken care of for you online. Obviously, I'm a supporter of the SchoolSpring package and their front end and the way they are organizing our job searches. I have been a SchoolSpring client. My recent position didn't come through SchoolSpring, but I was a SchoolSpring client last year, and I've gone through the same process that you are of establishing that package through the site. Many districts, and it is quickly declining, are still using old-fashioned paper. If things go well, this will be the last year that you'll see a paper application for the Guilford School District. Part of my interest in SchoolSpring is that our district is contracting with them to provide paperless handling of our application process. So there will be places that will still have the paper, but your SchoolSpring package or other application packages from other similar sites will certainly become much more of the norm. Now, we've got a couple of question breaks built into this as we get along. I'm at 7:15 in our time. We're looking to be here until about 8 o'clock. And I know Suzanne had told me we'd already had a couple of questions early on. I will stop here and see what you have for me, Suzanne. How are we doing?
Great. I'm going to unmute Irene Sintif. I apologize, Irene, if I pronounce your name incorrectly. So you can go ahead and ask Ken his question. I'm unmuting you right now. Hold on one second.
At this time, John, thanks.
Irene, sorry about that. Go ahead and start again.
I said I actually hit that by mistake. I was trying to raise my the volume on my speaker, and I apologize for that.
Okay.
All right, got that one done. Thanks, Irene. Do you have another one, Suzanne?
Grace.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. What are some things you want to talk about in the cover letter besides strength?
Great. Let's take a look back. Your most current experience is something you should open with. You should be talking about some of your strengths and characteristics, but really beyond that, most of what you're going to be bringing across is coming through in your resume. The cover letter is simply that. It shows your interest in the position. If there's something that may not be in your resume that may help with that link, a local connection, maybe you're moving to the area, something else that indicates to the reader what your specific interest is in that school district. There may be something you know about the district, its practices, what it maybe has been recognized for, some characteristics that wouldn't be resume material that you would include there. But my advice truly is to keep the cover letter brief.
Great, thanks. I'm going to go to another question here. Hold on one second. Let me just. Gail Shenson, I'm unmuting you right now. Gail, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm an experienced teacher, and I am currently sort of straddling two states. But in the meantime, I want to be sending out some resumes for open positions, but I have a lot of experience, and so I need to know how to prioritize the experience that I have without completely overwhelming any interviewers.
Great. And Gail put that question in before we opened. Am I in the right one with that, Suzanne?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Gail. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
We'll dig into the resumes now, and the samples we'll show here are one-pagers. Most resumes you should be able to accomplish and get the information out on a single sheet. But if you've been in this business for 15, 20 plus years, and you have many and varied and deep experiences, I will advise that a two-page resume would be appropriate. We'll look at some of the structures of those and some of the ways that you can highlight your experience. I'm a fan of chronological resumes. I know there's some folks, especially as they gain in more years of experience, try to prioritize them otherwise, but in my experience, I found them to be rather confusing to try to put together a stream of consciousness, if you will, in terms of the candidate's experience. So I'm a fan of chronological resumes, and in your case, Gail, to be able to move on to a second page, I think would be just fine. I will talk a little bit about where to be critical of. This is a critical area. Can't emphasize enough. In my search, the resume is next to the recommendations, the most important piece of your package. Clean, thorough, no gaps in your experience. If there is a change in career or a time that you've been away, that information might make it to the cover letter, but might find a line in the resume as well. It should be focused on your career goal. You might need different versions for different positions. As Gail said, you're bridging different states, but you may be bridging different positions and certainly different priorities for an administrative position over an instructional one. I would tell you to, as we on the slide, revise annually, make sure that things are up to date, and if you have any relevant information, to make sure it's included. Does that help, Gail?
Gail's on mute, sorry.
Okay. Another question, or keep moving on?
I would go into your resumes for right now.
Great.
And we can take
Okay.
some more questions after that.
Well, a couple of samples, and again, as you search the web, this one came from resumeresource.com, is a basic structure that I would recommend for resume builders. Again, not one formula, not one type, but here, just with a basic profile, your background in education, certifications you hold, and professional experience. This one, Susie, would be a beginning educator who has, here she began in 1988, so was not a beginning educator, but had been in one position over that time. She had been involved in a number of education programs, both for her bachelor's and master's, and spoke in the resume to seminars and workshops, not that she attended, but that she was a presenter at, things that were of significance in her preparation as a presenter. So I think just the setup of that, with the basic blocks of information and a short summary of experiences, is something that I would encourage. I have a couple to look at here. I took this sample resume from the same website and passed this along to a couple of my colleagues today and asked them to take a look at it and give me a little bit of feedback in anticipation of the webinar. And in about 3 seconds, they said, too much, too many words, too busy. So if you take a look at everything that Mr. No Name is trying to include in his profile and experience, he has gone probably too far in trying to give you details about those positions. Something that is also a concern on this, you might have picked it out by now yourself, is the 9 years as a loan consultant working for eLoan in Pleasanton, California. If you're looking for a counselor position and you've been a school counselor, or even though it has only been interim, to give equal weight and space to a loan consultant position is not something that I would recommend to candidates who are coming into the education field. It's okay, I think more than okay, it's appropriate if you have outside of education experience in your resume, but it should be balanced and proportional to what it is you're looking for in the goal. So for this one, I would be recommending that even the interim positions take greater prominence in the resume. The background in education should be included there as well. Certifications aren't listed. If that's a one-pager, I've got some real questions about this candidate that I may not be taking the time to go to the next level to have answered. Margaret Carey, though, on this slide, took the opposite approach. And when I showed this to those colleagues who spend a good bit of time in resume reviewing, they were very high on this one. Objective, qualifications, education, and experience. Again, a teacher who has been in 2 spots, in 2 positions going back to 1996. And compared to Mr. No Names before, this one I think would be a better choice. I was quite surprised, frankly, by my colleagues' how should you say, acceptance or endorsement of this one, because I was looking for them, in my opinion, there was too much white space here. And if we go back to No Name before, to Margaret here, my suggestion is something that's a little more balanced along with Mr. Job Seeker here, that there needs to be an appropriate amount of white space. There needs to be some break in categories and sections on the resume. They can be with a little bit more text, but should be more structured by the blocks and by the bullets. So I hope there's a couple of examples of resumes that might give you some do's and don'ts for you in the consideration of developing it. Another thing that's kind of a pet peeve of mine is on Job Seeker here at the bottom, listing computer skills. in 2012 to be listing that you're proficient in Office and Word and Outlook, and this is probably an older one from the website. Hopefully nobody's putting Word Perfect on their resume these days. To have a listing of basic computer skills, to me, is not a good use of resume space. We're going to assume that you have a grasp on those basic skills. If your technology skills, though, are enhanced beyond that level, then I would tell you they are essential. If you have any kind of multimedia experience, if you have participated and led webinars for multimedia experiences like this, if you have particular software that you have had more in-depth training, or you are a trainer or qualified to present, those are the kind of things that jump off the page to me for applicants on their resume. And time marches on. We're doing pretty well, and I still see 133 of you hanging in here with me, so I think we're doing pretty well so far. Questions on resumes? Suzanne, back to you.
Okay. Jessica LeBlanc, I'm going to unmute you here. So, Jessica, you're all set if you'd like to ask Kent your question. Jessica? Okay, muting Jessica. Al Hansen, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I was wondering if I heard both positions on references, whether or not you would suggest that references be listed on the resume.
Great. We're going to get to the reference section next in terms of how you can produce them. They're going to be included. If you're doing an application, most times those reference requests will be included with the application. I guess my advice to you would be you want to make sure the names and contacts for those references are part of the package one way or the other. If there is a formal application to submit, then have them there. You may not need to take the space to have to put them in twice on the resume if they're part of the package in that application. But yes, you want to have at least 2 or 3 contacts for references that make sure they make it in that first level of the package.
I have a question from the question box that I think is appropriate here, a couple of them actually. If you are a hiring principal, what are the primary strengths you want to know up front? So many skills are needed, it is difficult to keep it brief.
Good. That's a great question. As a principal, when I'm looking for candidates, the most important thing to me is to see the commitment to working with children. However that comes across. Now, if we're talking about beginning educators and people coming out of school, I want to know that you were successful and you had a work ethic and a waitressing job or a construction job or some other area, but I want to see evidence of what you've done with children, whether it's in a camp or a school program or sports or a library or a literacy program. I need to hear coming through that this is why you want to be in this field, that you have a passion for working with children, you have a passion to teach, and that to me is the most critical and essential characteristic, and a difficult one to carry off in print. We haven't got to the interview yet, so there needs to be some evidence that's going to come off the page to me that says this is why you want to be in this business.
Excellent, thanks. I'm going to open this up to Alexandra Hirsch. Alexandra, you're unmuted. Alexandra?
Hi.
Hi, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I was wondering what other technology skills that would be more applicable on a resume. Like, say it's not like for me, I know that I'm not formally trained in a lot of programs, but I'm very proficient with a lot of them. So how would I say that on a resume without being dull and kind of it being expected.
Well, if Suzanne, if we can leave her in here for a minute and leave Alexandra in, can you give me some examples, Alexandra, of where you have proficiencies?
In Word, in Excel, in PowerPoint. I'm very good with technology just in general.
Okay, so let's talk about Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And when somebody says Excel to me and they're in there, I start asking them about what formulas, what kind of data analysis, what have you done with Excel. Tell me, the question I'll ask is, what's the most challenging thing you've done with Excel? And you don't have to answer it now because you're not in the middle of an interview. Okay, but I've taught Excel courses, and I want to know if someone is writing a basic formula and using things to sort, or if they've done pivot tables and VLOOKUPs. It really depends on the position that you're looking for. If that position is for a middle school or secondary position, obviously your skills would need to be at a higher level. I think really more than the basic applications of office applications, maybe a student management program. Maybe it's Power School or Infinite Campus or one of the major or performance pathways for New Hampshire folks in data analysis. There may be a Photoshop or some other kind of multimedia experience you may have with Movie Maker or GarageBand or any of the Apple applications that can be very fun and very creative that you bring to the position that other candidates wouldn't. Our Promethean Smartboard and the whiteboard display programs have some fascinating features. And if in your experience you bring that to a school, those kind of skills are very attractive to me as an administrator hiring for a teaching position.
Okay. Since I'm actually going to be applying to be a special educator, data is very important in that job. So would Excel be something that they would look for?
Yes.
Yeah.
In special education, it's all about your documentation and your comfort with an online IEP program. Again, you don't have to answer the question; it's not your interview. But if someone in special education, if it's Casey or Nessus or one of the other databases that's used for that, if you don't have those experiences, I would encourage any special educator to go out quickly and find those. That kind of preparation will could make a difference in a hire over someone who isn't familiar with that program. You can find out through the district's website what it is they use. You can find out in advance which special ed management programs may be out there. And I guess I really haven't talked about that enough yet, because it would come at the next level when we get to the interviews, is doing your homework on the school district. And through their website, through whatever contacts you have, learn as much as you can about the district that you're applying to.
I'm going to, Ken, unmute one more person here and then ask one other question, and we can move to the next. Okay.
That's
Chet
great.
Waver.
Timing's good.
Okay. Chet Waver, I'm unmuting you. Chet, you're unmuted if you'd like to ask Kent your question.
Hi, my name is Emily Weaver. My husband and I are both here.
Okay.
I have a question back regarding the cover letter. I've written a general cover letter, and then with each position that comes up, I try to personalize it to the school, whether it's to their philosophy or their mission or their goals or what they state on SchoolSpring that they're specifically looking for. And I feel like there's so many ways to go with that. I don't know exactly what they're talking about, and I'm realizing I should probably shorten my cover letter in general. But what are they looking for that we want to match most? Their mission statement, their goals, what are they looking for?
Oh, Emily, you followed up on the comment about doing your homework exceptionally well. I wouldn't tell you it's going to be the mission, the goals, or the vision. It's the fact that you had looked that up. It's the fact that you are personalizing your cover letter to include some information. That tells me as a reader, no matter what it is, oh, Emily's done her homework. And now Emily's done her homework more than 15 others that were in this pile. So Emily is in the short pile. So that, in and of itself, I think, Emily, I don't think there's any one magic piece of advice I would give to you. But I can tell you that the candidates who have done their homework, and more obviously the ones that haven't, that's really been a challenge for me. But that's more when we get into the interview piece. So for the cover letter, yes, personalize it. Yes, make sure it's appropriate. I've had family members who have been on search committees and in other places and call me and tell me about a candidate who they laughed, said, well, left the name of the last school that he applied for on the cover letter. And I said, well, that's a real signal that you may want to be careful about. And she said, oh, no. And they went and hired this person, and the person didn't last more than a year. So, we can all make mistakes, but these are indicators. They need to be proofed. As I said at the beginning, you want to have your work proofread. If it's not by your spouse, if it's not by a family member, most definitely by a colleague or someone who can look at it with the same eye with the eye for the field and the purpose of your application. How's that?
All right. 2 other questions that I'm kind of wrapping up for people that have asked if these should be included in resumes. And one person asked, should I have an objective at the start of my resume? I always have adjust it for each job I'm applying for. Is this a good thing to do? And then the other question, kind of as it's in there, is it appropriate to put affiliations in the resume? For example, if you are a Pi Lambda Theta member.
Oh, great. Yeah, yes and yes. Objective and honors. The objective is important, particularly if it's a specialized position. If you're starting off and you're looking for a particular type of position, but frankly, most of us are going to personalize that objective to meet what the goal is, what the job is that we're applying for. But it's okay to have the objective, and I don't think it's a disqualifier one way or the other. As far as honors, yes. In the sample interview resumes here, you don't see that, but under Margaret's education, if she was in any honor society, that should be included. But your grade point average, the particulars from your transcripts will be included when you get there, but any scholarship awards, any particular overseas study, any internships, anything that sets you apart and shows your potential employer that you're energetic and active and have had these different level of accomplishments will help you make it to that short file. Yes. Moving on?
Yep, let's go. We can move on.
Here we go. References. Let's talk about references for a few minutes because we're at 7:38 and we're holding on with 131 of you still on the list. I guess we're doing okay. What references are and what they're not. References need to be relevant, recent, detailed, and of direct experience. Again, the ones that work are the ones that speak to specific skills in the job that you're looking for, as well as the successes in the job that you're in. They need to be recent. They need to be, if not in the past or current year, within X number of years based on how long you've been in this business. They need to be detailed. You want to have references that are speaking specifically to particular areas of your experience with the person writing the reference. And they should speak to different areas. If it's a principal, a supervisor, board member, whoever is providing that reference, not always, but most times should include that from someone who's a supervisor or someone who's at a level beyond your own. It is very challenging to me if the resumes or the references that I receive are coming from peers as opposed to supervisors. So your direct supervisor should always be included as a reference. and should speak to your direct experiences in the field that you're applying for. References should not be. It should be based on other skills in other areas. You may be applying for different types of positions, and you want to make sure that the references apply to those skills. And I put more than X years old. Well, if you're a beginning educator and just starting out, every reference will be only 1 or 2 years old. If you've been in the business 20 years, well, then you may be able to reach back on a reference of 3, 4, maybe even 5 years from a prior position or past experience, depending on how significant it is. But to go back beyond that, it would have to be something that is quite significant and exceptional from that reference source to go beyond 5 years. Most references now are known to you. You have them submitted to SchoolSpring, and they can be uploaded from the reference provider. The days of envelopes and sealed references, I think, are waning as well. The private and confidential reference is, in my opinion, something that is fading, because if someone is not going to be talking about your strengths or would be putting something in a confidential reference that they don't want you to see, well, what are they writing about? And what interests do they have in being your reference source? Last one, and particularly for our newer educators come into the field, certainly not from family, and to be very careful about family, friends, and other experiences you may have had socially or athletic or in other areas. It's okay if you don't have other, no, it's not okay. It's something that I would encourage you to stay away from if at all possible. Look for, if you don't have enough in the supervisory realm, then look for a colleague or someone who can speak directly about your work experience and not someone who is coming at it from more of a social or a family level. And now interviews. Had a little fun as I Googled what not to wear to an interview. And it's pretty clear that when you're going to an interview, you want to dress for the job you have. Don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. This fellow obviously is interviewing to be a superhero, but in many of our positions in education these days, we expect you to be one. The challenges, as you know, are great. As far as dressing, I'm not going to provide examples of whether it should be a 3-button or double-breasted sport coat or what kind of dress or where it should be. To me, your attire to the interview should be very neat and professional and clean, and in 2 seconds of your entry to the interview, take attire off the table. There shouldn't be anything about it that calls any more attention to you than that, so that the attention can be on your qualifications, on your experience, and on who you are, not what you're wearing. So I think is neutral, but certainly professional and clean and clear as you can be would be advice on what to wear for the interview. As far as your participation in the interview, you must adjust your world to their schedule. Remember, you are coming to look for a job, not to have them, well, how should I say, you're not steering the ship. The interviewer is steering the ship. You must adjust your world to the schedule for the interview times and for the actual content of it. You must, really would be good advice to practice your responses for you to be out in advance. And this is something I do with my interns at Plymouth State each semester. We will take turns and do some round robins and have the students interview in front of each other, and to take the turns to be both the interviewer and interviewee, to try to look at things from that other perspective. So either if you're new or if you're in the business for some time and haven't been in the search process, I would encourage you to do that. If you are in a current position now and have one of your references, an administrator, as you are looking to apply for a different position, to go and have some practice, because the questions have changed and the priorities have changed, with No Child Left Behind, with data-driven instruction, with understanding RTI. If we were talking about those things 10 years ago, well, I guess we have to go back further on that with No Child Left Behind now, and I've been at this too long. 12, 15 years ago, no one would know what you were talking about. So your preparation for that is going to be very important. Slow, clear. It's okay in your interview to take a couple of, take a thinking minute before you respond to a question. It's okay during your response to ask for a clarification, for you to be reminded, because many times you may be asked a multi-part question. You want to make sure you've heard and addressed every piece of that. So I would encourage you to practice, to go slowly, and be as thorough and direct as you can be with the interview. Let's hang on here and see if we've got interview questions while we're in this room.
All right, Kent, there's a few. There's quite a few people actually that are, with their references, they're coming into the education field from being in a business field, or being a stay-at-home mom and coming back, or having taken time off, maybe done some other things in the middle of going back into education. How do they address those types of references in supplying those to school systems that they're applying for?
Yeah. Let me go back to that example of the no name and the loan consultant. I think it is the balance on the resume. As I think I had said earlier, we want to know about those experiences. We want to know about what responsibilities you had and what you were doing professionally during those times. But most importantly, we need to know what your qualifications are for the position and to be working with children. If you had some specific training in that business background, in leadership or in management principles, so many things, if it's Covey or Daniel Pink or Jim Collins, so many, I read a lot of business management and leadership books that have nothing to do with education, but as I read them, I find the skills and the scenarios and the philosophies that are in those books, Gladwell, all of those translate very easily to schools. So if there was something in that background that is of importance that way, I would encourage. If those particular, that background applied to the field in a different way, let's say you might have been in sports management and now you're looking to get a job as a coach, well, then there's a connection you can make there. Maybe you've been in certainly from the business world, let's talk about something maybe in accounting or management, and you now have those technology skills we spoke of earlier that are at a higher level than your basic office applications. Those skills would be very important to an employer as well. So I think it's a matter of balance, and my advice is have it there, find where those connections are, and try to build the bridges to what it is you want to do. And it's probably a pretty good, to go back to the cartoon, because you're dressing or preparing yourself for the job you want, not the job you have. Does that help?
Yeah, and then how should their references be reflected on that? So obviously if somebody's transferring into education from the business world, or being at home for a few years, or different things like that, what types of references are appropriate?
Well, then it's balance again. If you're going to come into the education field, there needs to be, and I know you can't have the experience until you get there, but if you certainly are certified, you've been through a preparation program, you've been through an academic program, you've been through a student teaching experience. If not, then there are alternative ways you can come to the field. there needs to be some research and study that you've shared with someone else, and that person should be, if at all possible, your reference. I'm trying to think of people coming from here in New England, the Upper Valley Teacher Center. I've hired teachers in the past who came out of there, who came through conversion programs in Granite State College, who came with different backgrounds. But as I opened the webinar, the most important thing for me to hear about from the candidate is their passion for working with children. There had to be something that happened somewhere in that experience that says this is why, how and why you want to be spending your time in this field.
Great. A few interview questions that people had, and I'm just trying to get to them. So can you talk about asking questions as the interviewee during an interview? How many questions and what types of questions are appropriate without seeming overbearing?
Good. Yeah, and that's going to depend on the interview environment. It's going to be very different if you're in a one-on-one with a principal or an administrator or a human resource person, or if you're in a group interview. If you're in a group interview, usually there's going to be less opportunity for your questions because everybody in that group is going to get their questions in. So that's going to be something you'll have to gauge by the type of interview you're involved with. So I guess the rule of thumb I would offer is the larger the interview group, the fewer opportunities you would have for questions. Your questions certainly need to be clarified in terms of the process that they're involved with and what opportunities you may have to chat more informally outside of the interview. The questions should reflect, one more time, your knowledge of that district. Your questions should be very specific to something you've learned about the practices or beliefs in those schools. And you can find that from the website. You can find that from talking to people in the community. There's so much to be learned as we go on to the next year from simply using your Google. All of us do it, and it is the most effective thing that you can do. Is you go and search in Google, and you search on news, you search on images, you search on everything, and many things will come your way that something may help you in your decision about whether you want to be applying to that position or that place as well. But the tools that we have at our fingertips to gain information about schools and districts to help you in developing those questions, I think that's a good place for me to encourage you to use those.
Excellent. I'm going to take a question from Michael Walsh. Michael, I'm unmuting you. You're unmuted, Michael.
Okay, I have a few questions about references. My first question is should I get references from principals or from teachers and principals?
Principals first, and if, again, how current they are. If you had a principal from 10 years ago, that may be too far back. If the teacher you are looking for the reference has been involved in some special curriculum project or has been involved in some special research with you and can speak to skills that you have in that realm, or can speak to, again, your characteristics and successes in working with kids and families, what you've done with kids with exceptional needs on either end of the spectrum, what you've done to connect with families and community. Those, I think, would be very appropriate references to come from colleagues. But most importantly is that you have references from people who have directly supervised your work.
Thank you very much. And my last question for references is, I've noticed when I'm filling out applications that it's asking for the person I'm getting a reference from to fill out a reference form. I already have a letter of recommendation from them. So is it okay that if they don't fill one out, or do I need to do those?
And we'll see if I had that back here. Yeah, I thought I had it in here. Give them what they want. Okay? If that's what they're asking for in the format they want it, then that's what you want to bring. You don't want to tell them that you would rather do it your way. If you're applying for that job, you want to provide them, even if it's redundant, even if it doesn't make sense to you, if that's a job you want to pursue, you want to provide that information package to them the way they want to see it completed. Got another one, Suzanne? Moving on.
Sure. Michael Kelly. Michael, I'm muting you now. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. Good evening. My question has to do also with references. When I chose to work in an inner city school, it's a very chaotic environment, and there's a lot of difficulties with the principals and that type of thing. And it could actually, and I also am a career changer, and I'm older, and having difficulties with the principal, who also has their own problems, having a nice, beautiful, clean letter of beautiful recommendation might be very difficult to have. So how do I explain something like that I was in an environment that was so chaotic that things aren't nice and clean?
Yep. Well, then, is there then a colleague who may have had some other responsibilities as a department head or as a team leader who had some responsibilities not to supervise you directly, would be able to at least speak to your skills from somewhat of a different level? Can understand how that could happen in many situations with your administrator or direct supervisor, but that would be where you would be looking more for a colleague, but hopefully someone who can speak to specific skills and successes that you had.
Well,
let me throw one more thing in here. Parents, at this point as well, if you connected with a particular family in that experience and helped for that student to that had that connection with the parents, I think at that level, parental references would be appropriate to have in a package as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I graduated, tried career change, and I graduated from a major university's teacher preparation program. I graduated 3 years ago, and I had impeccable references from that. Can I use all of those references from my student teaching and from the university that I graduated from?
Of course. Those are the positive places that people can speak to your experience in working with in schools and with students. I would be, again, I don't want to have you answer these questions, but I would have you think about having them not all from one place. Hopefully there's, if the school was that difficult, then maybe there was a parent or a colleague to at least represent your experience there in a positive light about things you succeeded with. But as we said earlier, if you had particular honors, particular research projects, particular things that you've learned and done, and then we're going to get to the products of that now in terms of portfolios, those are the places that can enhance, or you have to get past the references before you get to this level. But this is the place you can be looking for supplemental material. Let's talk about portfolios, if we can move on with that, Suzanne, because we're getting to 8 o'clock. I can keep going a little further if folks want to hang on. Our numbers have held up pretty well. Suzanne, what do you think?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Supplemental materials. The days of the 3-ring binder portfolio have passed, folks. I know quite a few years ago there was a great emphasis put on developing paper portfolios with nice pocket protectors and sleeves and a lot of information. From my perspective and my advice is that those are really nice and they can reflect a lot of successes that you've had, but it's not the kind of material that's going to be getting a lot of play early in a reference process. You can certainly have some materials of that type, But if it's in a 1/2 inch to a 1 inch bound binder, that would be, I think, far more valuable than the large 2 or 3 inch bound binder of material. My suggestion to you is that the portfolio source can come from any number of places. As I said earlier, I'm a huge fan of Google applications and encourage and have started these in my district as well. Free, simple, powerful ways for you to collect information and demonstrate technology skills. And it's free to everyone, and it is certainly the direction, as you see from the little screenshot here, of where schools are headed. There are, in terms of the contents of your portfolio, they should certainly be personalized. As I tell my student teachers every year, I don't want to see copies of lesson plans. I do want to know that you had learned about planning and learned about how to produce a unit. Would love to see as much visual and multimedia in any realm. If you have any multimedia opportunities to share, that again demonstrates your technology fluency and maybe understanding what Web 2.0, Web 3.0 may have to offer in your position. And as I said earlier, be selective, not to bring the massive binder with everything you've done, but to pick on some highlights that again demonstrate skills, creativity, energy, and a commitment to children. A screenshot of my digital portfolio that I used in my recent position, and then one from one of our undergraduates up at Plymouth State. And this one is done with a package that every student at the college uses called, I think, Mahara. And as part of their preparation, they put together this digital portfolio. Brad is an undergraduate music major who came from my past district, and I knew as a high school student, and he just blew me away when he had put this together in his beginning of his freshman year, and has continued to enhance it with his experiences as he has grown. His is at an exceptional level in terms of his preparation to be a music educator. So as we're getting on past 8, a couple of thoughts in that realm before we wrap up.
I'm going to take a question from Janice Kroll. Janice, I'm muting you right now.
Okay, actually my question is more about the online resumes. The place I've been applying, they say they get over like 200 applications. What are some buzzwords that people are looking for, the hirers are looking for, that we can put in our online applications that will get us pulled out?
Well, it depends on the job. What kind of a job are we talking about?
Usually middle school science.
All right. Well, great. In the science realm, from my perspective, it's physical science. I'm a fan of life sciences, and I'm a fan of its place, but the place for me in looking at science candidates is their knowledge of the physical science and the sciences and physics in particular. Integration with math. Science has taken such a back seat to mathematics instruction thanks to No Child Left Behind and the standards and assessments. So it's harder and harder to find a place for science in the school day. So if there is ways you can demonstrate physical science experiences, you can demonstrate how you've integrated that with math experiences, I think would be 2 very concrete examples. Another one there, Suzanne?
Yep, I'm going to go to another question here. Mary Lou, and I put Pralat. Mary Lou, I'm taking you off mute here.
Okay, my question is it ever appropriate to call and inquire when the interview process will begin? I currently have an application into another school system. Posting closed a few weeks ago, but the job isn't open until, for next fall. But I'm anxious. When are they going to start the interview process? Should you ever email or phone call and inquire?
Yeah, that's a hard one. It really is hard to do that tactfully. But if it is a district that is important to you and you can call the office and get that information from a secretary and not have to get directly to kind of appear that you're trying to get a head start or a jump start with the people doing the interview. I think that is an appropriate thing for you to ask. Timing is so critical in so many of these things because, as you know, everyone is coming at their timelines from different places based on their vacancies and hiring process. So there's no good answer for you on that. I would say if you can do it gracefully and tactfully, and maybe you'll get some information, but that's a hard one.
Have some questions here on the online portfolio that I thought are relevant at this point. At what point during the process is the online portfolio given to a school, and how can you send the digital portfolio to a school district when they, if they don't provide kind of an area to do that?
Wonderful. I should have mentioned this earlier. Your digital portfolio should be stored online, and it should be in a link. So you have a hot link, a hyperlink that you can include in any digital communication. You have an email address for the district or for the principal. Get it there in a digital form. You're not going to be able to type it. You can type in a URL. You can put it on your resume. I would encourage you. Let's go back to that. That's a very good point. Let's go back to resumes. And you have your email address at the top of a resume. And I guess a couple of little things here. You can identify home and cell, but that really doesn't make much difference to folks anyway because they're usually one and the same. But if you have a short URL that you would include in the heading of your resume or on the resume somewhere, that may help bring that portfolio forward. But it should be a URL that you're able to have whoever's on the hiring committee be one click away from seeing that digital portfolio.
Great. I'm going to take Alan Gutman off of mute. Alan, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. Thank you. Just following up on the question, I guess she asked about application and, sort of seeing when the interview process would move forward. I think my question is, a lot of times recently, you go for the interview and sometimes you hear nothing for quite a long time. I think, what's the expectation there and follow-up?
Well, and that's hard. There's a number of things that can happen. I know in my district we try very hard to be as clear and timely as we can with applicants. If we have you in for an interview, it's our responsibility in a short period of time to let you know the status within a week or two of that application. If you're not moving on and you had come in for an interview, it's my practice in districts I've been in to have some notification of that by email, letter, or message. If you're considered a finalist, my practice is to get in touch with that finalist directly, even if they were not selected for the position, as challenging as a call as that may be. If there are districts that aren't responding to you, well, and I hate to put it this way, but then that may not be the place you wanted to be anyway. If they don't have that level of consideration for your efforts in applying and then actually interviewing for the position.
Great. I'm going to take one more question from somebody who's raised their hand, and then we'll take, I'll do another one or two questions, and we can wrap it up and close it out. So okay, Cynthia great. Schmidt, I'm taking you off mute. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, okay, fabulous. So I'm an art teacher, and I'm returning to the education field after about, I've been out of the school system now for about 10 years, but I have participated in another field and I do have a lot of continuing education experience working with students, but not in a public classroom, a public school setting. And I'm coming back in, and I've got, and I do have my lovely portfolio. I'm an art teacher, as I said, so that kind of goes with me everywhere. I have a website, but I don't have one of the online portfolios that you were talking about. That sounds like it's a representation of what I have in paper online.
Yep, great. Well, that's a great example of a number of things that I talked about that I'm going to backtrack on. No, as coming out from 10 years gone to have had supervisory references from 10 years ago in your case would be very appropriate. If you were in a school position 10 years ago and you had a strong reference from a supervisor then that most certainly should be part of your package. If you don't have a digital portfolio, it's not a deal breaker in most districts by any means. It's certainly something that I encourage and want to have. And now I'll also backtrack as an art teacher. I think your portfolio and your portfolio of your experiences is far more important than it would be if you were a math teacher. So that your ability to demonstrate different media, your success with oils, clays, painting, sculpture, whatever areas you want to showcase, there's certainly a need in a visual position like visual arts for a more detailed portfolio. I encourage all of my candidates to gain those skills, and as simple as it is in the Google Apps to go as you upload photos. It's as simple as uploading photos to anything else you would use. And frankly, I didn't touch on the Facebook world at all and what admonitions I need to offer to my student-teacher interns about that. But you can, in very safe and secure ways, upload images to a place that would serve as even a Picasa folder through Google as a photo album. Would be a very simple and easy tool to use to get that information appropriately on the web. Does that help?
I had put her back on mute. So I'm going to actually change the organizer back to me here.
Yep.
And we're going to kind of wrap this up. So I wanted to just kind of go over with everybody a few things. I know a ton of people have questions. One of the things that I wanted from a SchoolSpring point of view, some of the things that we hear from employers that actually get them that your resume and your cover letter might not even be moved on to the next phase in the process. And some of the things we hear about applicant resumes is cover letter inaccuracies, not having your cover letter addressed to anybody, or it's addressed to the wrong school system, or it's addressed and it's not for the appropriate position you're applying for. So you really need to double check your cover letter. A lot of employers will not even move on past your cover letter if it's not to the appropriate person.
Yeah,
they also might have,
not have you double check it, have someone else double check it. That is a strong thing I brought up a couple of times here. You need another set of eyes to look over those materials. But go ahead.
Yeah, so that's great. And then a lot of times, if you're not qualified for the position or you do not meet the minimum requirements for that position, they get a lot of applications, and that actually kind of hurts the process. So if you end up applying for another position in the school system, a lot of times that might deter them from looking further at your resume. So you definitely want to make sure you're applying to positions you're qualified for and you're meeting those minimum requirements. Another thing we hear from applicants is that you did not include, another thing we hear from employers about applicants is that you did not include all the required material. And a lot of times they'll consider that an incomplete application, and again will not move you further than a quick review of your information. So you definitely want to make sure you include all the required material when you're applying for a position. Do you have any comments about that one?
You got it right on.
Yeah. Okay, so and then The other thing is it's really important for you guys to follow instructions. We hear a lot that there was a special question that was asked, or there were special instructions in the job description that weren't followed, and a lot of times you're taking out of the running for not following the instructions that were given in the job description. So it's really important to make sure that you read the job description requirements and those types of things when applying for a position, because these are just some of the things we hear from our employers at use SchoolSpring about the applicant components coming in.
Yes, you want to give them the information they're looking for, not the information you want to give them.
Exactly. That's a great way to run and this. So I know that so many of you guys asked questions on this that we couldn't get to. A lot of them I've recorded this session, so anybody that jumped in the middle, they will receive a link to listen to this at their leisure. I'm also going to send a follow-up email to all participants that include the resume sites that Kent had provided and also the website for the digital portfolio. We do still encourage you guys to send in your questions. So I'm going to give you my email address now. We're going to try, because there were so many really great questions we weren't able to get to. So the email address that I'd like you to go ahead and send those questions to, and we'll try to get back to as many people as possible, is Suzanne@schoolspring.com, and that's Suzanne, SUZANNE, @schoolspring.com, because we really appreciate everybody taking the time tonight to be on this. We hope that this was beneficial. We're also going to be sending out a quick survey that you'll receive in the next few days to just kind of give your feedback. We'd appreciate you filling that out. And I just want to thank everybody, and especially Kent, for taking his time this evening to listen in, and hopefully people were able to take some positive out of this that they can apply immediately to their cover letter, resume, and application component.
Yes, and I guess one last thing, I really appreciate this opportunity and the time to participate here, and I'm a superintendent. I got thick skin. Any feedback you can give me on this survey, I would appreciate. So I'll sign off with that. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.